My name is Steve Zeltzer. I'm with LaborFest. LaborFest is a month-long commemoration of the San Francisco General Strike. And also, we have a lot of events about working-class issues in the Bay Area, nationally and internationally. And this last Saturday, we had a conference on privatization and outsourcing in the United States and in around the world, Puerto Rico, Turkey, and Mexico. We had some workers from Mexico give a report on the effect of the strikes that they've had. They've had a major strike wave in Mexico. 60 parts plants in Matamoros, which is right across the border from Brownsville, Texas, are struggling for unions, independent unions, and against the slave labor conditions. So the meeting tonight is really about a major attack, political economic attack on the Port of Oakland, the longshore workers, and the maritime industry. And this is a very serious thing because it could lead to the elimination of thousands of jobs of maritime workers. And it's not unique because the gentrification, the turning over of port lands to stadiums and developers for condos is something that's been going on around the country, and also right here in San Francisco, where we have a stadium and we have basically a tourist trap for the tourists. The industry, with the exception of Pier 80, a couple of other small terminals have been basically turned over to other development. So we're going to talk here tonight about that struggle and also what we can do about it, because there is a campaign to defend the Port of Oakland, to stop the development. John Fisher and other speakers will talk about it, but one of the first struggles that we know about of John Fisher, who's the owner of the A's, is the Gap Corporation. He and his family own Gap. His mother is Doris Fisher, and she is actually on the board of KIPP in San Francisco, and they were actually involved in setting up a charter school next to a public school at the Malcolm X Academy in Hunters Point, Bayview. And this is something actually that the superintendent of Oakland, or the superintendent of San Francisco, was involved in doing, Vincent Matthews, who allowed this charter to be set up in a co-location with the next to the public school. And actually, there are a lot of connections between what's going on with the right to defend the murals and the developers, the privateers, the billionaires who want to privatize education, who want to privatize the Port of Oakland, and are involved in privatizing all over the world. So our first speaker, so welcome Keith Shanklin, who's the president of ILWU Local 34 and has been on the front lines to oppose the privatization of the port. Welcome, Keith Shanklin.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, we're in committee right now. Just coming for a couple of words just to say hello. Welcome to Local 34. Let you know that I stand tall with everyone here in this room for those who want to organize and fight the fight, and down with corporate greed, up with unionism, and protest as much as you can. If we have to, we go run naked in the streets like they used to do in Berkeley, right? But one thing we got to know, as long as we got fighters in this room, we always have solidarity. So please, as much as you can, fight the system, because it's going to fight its way against you. Stay strong, stay tall, solidarity.
So I think Steve was saying that we just came from the city council meeting. It was delayed a couple hours, and we actually never got a chance to speak. But one of the points I wanted to make about the Oakland A's and the billionaire owner, John Fisher, is that the Oakland A's are saying this is going to be a big plus for the city of Oakland, that they're going to provide jobs and affordable housing. In reality, what it is It's a scam. It's a real estate scam where he intends to build million-dollar condos in the Jack London part of Oakland. And they also, his company also bought the land that the Oakland Coliseum was on. The Oakland Coliseum.
They're doing a really good deal on it, too.
Yeah, yeah. That's my cheerleader over here. Thank you, Heather. Yeah, they got a good deal on it, and now the County of Alameda owned half of that, the Oakland A's, or John Fisher owned the other half. Now he owns the whole thing, and that's not enough. Now he wants to move into the port and take land from the 5th largest port in the country, 3rd in California. The 2 largest ports in the country are Los Angeles and Long Beach. But the Port of Oakland is a thriving port. And to put a baseball stadium in there will take away, it's right in a key part of the port. So this is a quintessential example of how capitalism works. The laws on the books, the Tidewaters Trust Act says that the port areas, all along the shoreline, is supposed to be used for maritime and industrial purposes only. The public trust says that that land is supposed to be used for navigational purposes, shipping, and for other water uses, recreational uses. But it has to be related to water in some way or another. The Oakland A's stadium has nothing to do with that. It's not industrial, it's not maritime, and it's not for water activities. So it's illegal on in every count. So how do they do that? If you're a billionaire, you grease the skids, and that's the politicians. So the mayor of Oakland is Libby Schaff. Libby Schaff used to work for Jerry Brown. Libby Schaff worked for the Port of Oakland as the public relations person, director of public affairs for the Port of Oakland, and then she became mayor. After becoming mayor, just last year, what did she do? She held a press conference with the president of the Oakland A's, Dave Cavall, and announced that they're supporting this new plan for a stadium. So when did she stop working for the port? Or when did she stop working for John Fisher, the billionaire? This is it's a struggle that goes on and on and on under the system that we live under, which is capitalism, which is the 1%, the big capitalists, pay off the politicians and get what they want. And it's been going on time and again. And under the austerity programs that have been implemented under capitalism, we have crises developing in the public schools where they want to liquidate public schools and make them charter schools. Who's a big pusher of that? John Fisher, billionaire. Bill Gates, billionaire. The other crisis that we have in Oakland, you have it here in San Francisco as well, is a housing crisis. It's terrible. The people in West Oakland can't afford to live there any longer, and if they can't keep up with their payments, they're homeless. And it's a crime to see how many homeless people there are in Oakland, living in tents, living under the freeways. There's a big one near where I live on the end of Fruitvale, down by the Home Depot. They have a couple hundred homes and shacks and people in there living in their trucks, in cars, in RVs. And this is what is happening in this society. There's a tremendous disparity of wealth, and it's not being addressed. And that's what we're up against here with the fight to privatize the port, or part of it anyway. Now, some people say, well, Oakland is going to end up being like San Francisco is, where it used to be the major port on the West Coast, and now, barely has passenger ships. That's about all they get in. Maybe once in a while they get a freighter into Pier 80. But the reason Oakland became the larger port in Northern California is because we have the land there. They don't have land to stack up these containers. When containerization started taking a foothold in the industry, they needed more land, and Oakland is where they went. So, on the other hand, Oakland, it's interesting. Oakland is the only major port in California that doesn't have a longshore or maritime labor representative on the Port Commission. Not that that makes a hill of beans, because you'd have one person against whatever all the others were. But it's an indication of how tilted, how skewed things are against labor. Rather than pick someone from the ILWU, which there's the president of the ILWU sits on the San Francisco Port Commission, and we have two people in the two largest ports in the country, LA and Long Beach. They're with the ILWU. One sits on each of the harbor commissions there, but not in Oakland. And so what I see happening with Oakland is this is the beginning of a big fight over jobs for a union that has a tremendous record when it comes to social justice. From the very beginning, the Longshore Union stood up for integration. We integrated our union in 1934 in order to win the big strike. We wouldn't have won it without black and white unity, simple as that. But that was a radical step in those days. We've also taken stands for housing. I talked about the housing crisis a little earlier. Well, ILWU isn't just philosophically in favor of affordable housing. We built it here in San Francisco at St. Francis Square. That's another interesting point about social justice in terms of our union. Well, Martin Luther King and Paul Robeson are honorary members of our union, I'm proud to say. But I think maybe one of the biggest things that we've done is stand up against the recent attacks by police across the country, police brutality and killing mainly of people of color. In fact, I'll just tell you a little anecdote of how we've developed this position. It happened in 1934. If you come over to the Longshore Hall by Fisherman's Wharf, you'll see a mural on the floor, on the sidewalk outside of our hall, and it says, "Two longshoremen shot in the back, police murder." That's exactly what was painted by the dead bodies of the two strikers that were killed in 1934. So fast forward to 2009, when Oscar Grant, the young black man who was coming back from New Year's celebration in San Francisco to Oakland by the train because his mother didn't want him to drive, you know, New Year's Eve, people drink. So you take the subway or the BART system. It's safe, right? No. So what happened is so many of us saw it on TV. A number of people had cameras, cell phones, and they taped it. And this was police murder, shot in the back. And so I was talking to Cephas Johnson. Cephas X is the uncle of Oscar Grant. And I said, you know, my wife knew, or she recognized Oscar Grant on TV when they showed the film. He works at the supermarket, Farmer Joe's, just around the corner. Yeah, on Fruitvale. Yeah, yeah. And my wife recognized him on television. And so I talked to his uncle. I said, you know something? we have a pretty good record in the ILWU of standing up for social justice. You should come to our next union meeting and address the members. And he came, and I took him outside, and I showed him the mural with longshoremen shot in the back, police murder. And he said to me, you know, that's exactly what happened to my nephew. And when he got up and spoke to our members, it was eloquent and impassioned, and you could hear a pin drop in the audience. And we voted right on the spot there to shut down the port, to demand justice, that Meserly go to jail for this crime. And we had a big rally. Clarence was the central speaker at that rally. In what's now called Oscar Grant Plaza. It used to be called City Hall. But that's the kind of track record that the ILWU has. And so in fighting against these employers, they're going to try to eliminate us. And if they do, we are a strong component in this class conflict between the capitalists and the working class. Arguably, we're the most militant union in the country. And to take down that aspect of our class, the fighting edge would really set back any kind of class struggle in this country. So I was telling Clarence and Gabe, Gabe's the president of local, is it 54? 52, okay, Seattle. One of the things I was going to say at the City Council tonight was the last great speaker to speak at the Oakland Coliseum was Nelson Mandela. And the first words out of his mouth, this was in 1990 when he was doing the world tour, the first thing he said was, I want to credit the Longshore Union, ILWU Local 10, for creating the spark that ignited the anti-apartheid movement in this country. So, I mean, we're proud of our union and what we've achieved in terms of the fight for social justice. And if Fisher is successful in building the stadium there, it's going to be the beginning of chipping away at that whole port. So would it be like San Francisco? I don't know. It's going to be hard to do that. But I remember 20 years ago at a Longshore Caucus, which is like a convention of the longshoremen up and down the coast, I remember we had a discussion about what the employers are envisioning way into the future, which is now, which is that maybe there would be 2 ports on the West Coast. SeaTac, which is Seattle and Tacoma, that's what their airport's called now, SeaTac. Their port would be SeaTac. And LA Long Beach. And nothing significant in between. So how would they get the cargo up here? Because we're the 5th largest metropolitan area in the country. They truck it up or they ship it by train. So it's possible that if we don't stop this incursion into our jurisdiction now, and this is the most militant union in the ILWU, and if we don't stop them now, this could be the beginning of the end. We have a number of fights, not just about this Oakland A's stadium. We got a big fight coming up over automation, which they're facing not just here in Oakland now, but in Los Angeles. They're already automating terminals where there's just a handful of longshoremen. They don't even drive the trucks. They have automated trains that come underneath the hook, and they load the ship and they unload the ship, and the tracking of cargo, which is done by the ship's clerk, is, you know, all this information now is computerized. So we got a big fight on our hands. Hopefully we'll be able to mobilize the Bay Area, because what we want to do is to get other unions and the public behind us. And if we can do that, then we have a chance of winning. But that's the key thing, is to get other unions behind us and fighting for our jurisdiction. And, you know, it's not just about longshore jobs, because it affects the entire community. There's thousands of jobs that are behind the ones that we do. So this is going to be a cataclysmic fight between labor and capital. And we've shown solidarity for others in the past, and we need to get solidarity from other unions in order to win this fight.
Now, one of the issues that we're going to be talking about when we open it up for discussion is that, unfortunately, the Alameda Building Trades Council and the Teamsters Union and the Alameda Labor Council are supporting this development. And the question is, which side are they on? But the fact that they would take positions and they would speak out at the Port Commission in favor of this raises questions about the labor movement as a whole. And that has to be addressed. And the other thing is that this move on the Port of Oakland is not just in the Bay Area. There are moves by billionaires to do the same thing and to get support politically with politicians and unions for other stadiums. And we have a special guest with us, Gabriel Prahl, who is the president of ILWU Local 52 in Seattle, who has also been facing a fight there to protect the port and to defend the maritime industry. So welcome, Prahl.
Greetings, brothers and sisters.
Greetings.
It's a pleasure to be here today. I just want to share with you that a lot of my activism and involvement in the ILWU came from inspiration and mentoring from a brother from this area by the name of Leo Robinson. Leo was very inspirational in educating me and inspiring me to do a lot of the work that I do today. I come from an area where, as a black man in the union, we have to do a lot of fighting to even stay in the union. It's not like it is over here in the Bay Area. But when you love a union that's very progressive, very inspiring, people eventually learn to see your heart and your meaningful goodness for the work and the people around you and trying to make it better for everybody. You know, Jack spoke earlier about the struggle that's going on as far as in the port. But we are having the same struggle here in Seattle. You know, the critical part of it is that over here you're fighting all kind of entities in the fight. And we're doing the same thing in Seattle. But one of the questions I ask myself is like, should we be also fighting somebody that's within the union that's being benefit in the union, but goes outside of the union and do partnership with a corporation that wants to destroy the work? That's the problem that is critical in my area. Well, we happen to have something like that going on. We happen to have a union member that made millions of dollars working through the union for the years it's been, but he's in the process of trying to get a payoff from the big business to encourage people to support building the stadium in our area. It's unacceptable. You know, I represented community in the area that I live, not only in the union. So I have to do this battle and fighting to educate my community as far as what's going on. Well, it didn't come back as a plus to me. I would say the attack against me has been multiplied because now the investor, which is, and I'm not going to be afraid to say who the investor is because he's already made himself public. Chris Hansen, billionaire Chris Hansen. He's already been in the Seattle Times, putting out articles, and he's already been paying people to push this agenda. He came to our union and tried to encourage for the union to support what he's doing. The union opposes, and then he decided he's going to launch an attack against the union and anybody that's trying to stop the show going on. Now, the thing about this is when you have people supporting you, it's great. And I have a letter here, and it just happened to come today to me while I was attending the city council meeting here in the Bay Area. And I mean, things happen for a reason, because I didn't expect this. It just popped up, and I looked at my phone, and I wait a minute, is this an email to somebody from Seattle that's been working with me, giving me the information, send me this email, just in time. Just in time, because I was able to give this to local town president Melvin, and when he he read it, he said, you know what, I'm going to read this into the minutes at the city council, because it needs to know. Because I understand right now that you guys have a mayor right here that's opposing, is supporting and opposing the union right to have a working place, right? And this is the letter that was sent by the City of Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkins. Dear members of the City Council, as the City of Seattle embark upon consideration of amending to the comprehensive plan, I urge you to consider the importance of protecting industrial lands and the diverse family wage jobs that we support. By them, with our growing population and increasing housing demand in Seattle, there's every increasing market pressure to convert industrial land to other land uses, such as multi-family residential, commercial development, and additional high-tech job centers. As mayor, I'm committed to fostering an inclusive and resilient local economy which require readily available industrial land. Like many of you, I am deeply concerned about any proposal that will lead to the decrease of land available for maritime, manufacturing, and industrial use. That's a mayor that's really care about the working class people. Industrial lands are backbone to support family wages jobs and necessary to build an inclusive economy for Seattle without questions. Housing and commercial development are necessary and have greatly improved many areas of our city, meeting the needs of growing city, creating vibrant neighborhood, and supporting thousands of new jobs. Land zone for industrial use, however, support many goods and diverse family wages jobs. Seattle's most recent study on industrial land found 106,000 current industrial jobs in Seattle, representing 18% of total employment in the city. Over 67% of Seattle industrial jobs require only a high school diploma or no formal education credential in maritime industry cluster like fishing or water transportation. Average earning per workers are over $100,000 a year. You're talking about jobs that people went to school and not even get a degree, a bachelor, and still not making that kind of money. These are jobs that last for generations. And I'm saying this because, we are also fighting trade union that are, I say, supporting these constructions of the stadium because it's going to be a job for their members. I'm trying to understand the principle of the labor movement, that when we have jobs that are going to last for generations, that's the job that we protect. You get a job that you just do for one contract and it's over. The people that are going to be hired to work in those places are going to be making minimum wages. They're going to be making $15 an hour is not even enough to live today. We understand that, right? $15 an hour is not enough to live today. And that's the type of job that they are encouraging to promote in our community, telling people, we're bringing jobs to you. Well, you know, between last year and now in Seattle, we had our lottery, and we brought in about over 540 new casuals. About 1/3 of those are black and people of color in the community. That's people that are given a chance to have a livable wage in the future, insurance and medical care and things, pensions, things that go on for a long time in their life. You got also the descendants that are going to inherit the opportunity to get those jobs. No, I can't see people call themselves part of the labor movement, and then all you think about you making your money today and forget about the future of everybody else. That's not what the labor movement was intended to be. We got problems. We got serious problems. We got people in the labor movement not really doing the work that it's supposed to be doing. You see, I always tell people, I did not born just to get up and go to work every day. I have a purpose. There's a purpose in life. And if you can't figure that out, you're not on the right track, brother or sister. We are here for a purpose. We're not here just to come make my money and don't contribute to the humanity, don't contribute to the people. I mean, I can see myself living that way. God did not create me like that. There is a problem there when people are just thinking of themselves, and they make all this money and don't want to contribute nothing back to humanity. I mean, if we do what we're supposed to do, I think we'd have a better place to live. I just think so. But I've been attacked many times, even up to today, as I continue to support and do the work that I'm doing. And the thing is about it is that those people that attack me haven't got a response from me yet, right? They don't realize that when you are surrounded by people like a movement that I'm part of, the Million Worker March, the ILWU, the A. Philip Randolph Institute, think organizations that strengthen you, organizations that support you. You don't need to show off. You don't need to attack anyone. Everything's going to fall in its place. The truth going to come to light. And those that are destroying what divert the real course of life is going to realize that good is better than bad. Solidarity is better than division. Strength is better than weakness. And I say strength is better than weakness because you take a weak person to go take money from investors to destroy other people's life. That's a person that doesn't care for anyone. That's a person that thinks that he's going to go somewhere with all that. It's not going to happen. The labor movement has been fighting the battle for generation about corporations trying to keep us down. Corporations trying to take everything from the working class. And we're still here. We're still here surviving. That's speak volume. One of the things that I know we have to do a lot is education. We got to educate our young people coming up today because they need to be prepared for the battle. We can't keep starting it all over again, Here we go again. We got to leave some kind of blueprint to set the course so we can strengthen this labor movement. Day after day, I'm seeing this billionaire putting out things in the newspaper. But also I'm seeing the people around him. He's flinging that money around, paying people to go and talk to other people to encourage them to vote in favor of this development. There's plenty of places they can do the development, but they are choosing to do it right in the middle of working class people, take away union jobs, people that can have a better living. They want to build condos there that people cannot afford. I mean, this is just, it doesn't make sense. You know, the fact when you take away union jobs and you raise the price of everything, all those people are supposed to live. How do they feed themselves? I mean, the equation doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. So what the intent is? Intent is billionaires, everybody else poor. Because that's the only way it can lead to. That's why we as labor leaders, we as organizers, we as union members, we have to fight. We cannot. I have my kids, my grandson, and the generation coming after them that I have to look out for to make sure they have an opportunity. Because if I don't, it's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. I'm just grateful that I was able to meet people, especially like I say, a lot of my activism, I learned it here in the Bay Area. A lot of my inspiration, I got it out in the Bay Area. And being part of the ILWU, looking back on the history of the ILWU and what it was created on, one of the most social conscious unions in history, has inspired me to do the work I do. But I know there's a lot more to go. And I'm just glad that I'm here today because I know with Steve here doing what he does, a lot of people are going to get a chance to hear what's going on. Because people doesn't know. And, you know, you got one, you're hearing one side, they're not telling you the real truth. They never tell you the real truth. We know. See the guy up there who's lie every day? I mean, this is what we're dealing with. But we have to build on our solidarity. We got to wake up, stay woke, and we got to train our young people. We got to take on this fight. We cannot allow these big business to make the decision to want to come destroy what the labor movement has worked so hard for generations to build, just so they can have it all. In fact, they got it all by abusing, by forcing people to work for free labor, slavery. That's how they got their money. And that's what we're dealing with today. That's what they want to bring us back into, the same thing. Because if you don't make enough to live, you don't make enough to survive, you don't make enough to take care of your children, kids, then you are living in slavery. That's reality. So, Steve, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here and share my inspiration. And I could say, you guys will see me in the future because I'll continue to fight. I'm not backing down. I'm not quitting. And I got a movement behind me. Thank you.
So today is an important day in one way, and that is the House of Representatives just voted that the President of the United States is a racist. He's a racist, and he's basically they called him out.
250 years for that.
Yeah, that's been going on a long time, the racism. And the question that we face is, what are we going to do about it? Because you can pass resolutions, but what are you going to do about them? Now, when Trump came into office, he tried to appeal to some unions, sections of unions, including the AFL-CIO building trades, the laborers and other craft unions, the operating engineers, and they met with him. And this was at the same time he was making racist comments. Now, some of these unions, like the laborers, have large Latino memberships. These are the very members that are being threatened by this racist, open racist, violence, incitement to murder and attack Latinos and African Americans in this country. Now, why would they meet with them? For a few jobs? That's the question we have to ask. And I think it's this business mentality, because one of the reasons that the capitalists have wanted to destroy the ILWU, as Gabriel said, is it stands up for principles. It defends workers in the community. It has strike actions for workers around the world and workers here. And actually, I'm a product of that because I was on strike 50 years ago with Clarence Thomas at San Francisco State. And the ILWU, not only did they support the strike in words, they offered strikers, and I was a union member at that time in the library, jobs on the docks. Now that's concrete solidarity. That's not talk, that's concrete solidarity. And at that time, Ronald Reagan probably wanted to bring in the National Guard. In fact, he was trying to bring in the National Guard to break the strike. But I think that ILWU, who was mayor at that time, was afraid that if they had done that, there would be a real general strike against the attack on the students, the black student unions, the Third World Association, the students who were fighting, and the faculty union which supported that strike. So today you have two presidents, well, one president, Sarah Nelson, who is opposed to the development of the port. She's president of the airline flight attendants and spoke at the May Day rally. You have Bruce Hamilton from the ATU has called for a general strike against climate to stop the attack on climate. So we're in an atmosphere today in this country where people are thinking about those things. And they haven't happened yet, but people are thinking about those things. And who is the union to lead this fight? The ILWU, because of its tradition and history. And I think that in the labor movement, as we fight to successfully stop the development of that port, we really have to use this as an opportunity to educate the entire working class and community that this isn't just about the Port of Oakland. This isn't just about port jobs. This is about the survival of the entire working class. That's what we're talking about. Because the destruction of the ILWU would be a brutal and bitter defeat for the working class. And we have to put it in that context. So I want to welcome our next speaker, Clarence Thomas, who is retired secretary of ILWU Local 10, and also with the Million Worker March, and also leading the fight against the privatization of the port and for the defense of the jobs in the community. Welcome, Clarence Thomas.
Greetings, sisters and brothers and comrades. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Steve. And as I have mentioned here Saturday, once again, I want to acknowledge the work of he and his partner Cosme with regards to the question of the labor video project, the coverage that that particular important institution has provided to our movement. It chronicles our struggle in very real terms. And it's really wonderful because I'm beginning to understand the value of the social media. I've been forced to give up my flip phone and finally got an iPhone, and this is a very powerful thing. Jack made reference to Oscar Grant, and I just want to say something very quickly before I forget, because I am of that age. I want to make a quick announcement because I will forget this. It's out of context, but I want to make an announcement right now. We've yet, when I say we, there is a East Oakland Stadium Alliance, which I will talk about in more detail. It's made up of a variety of entities, some that may surprise you. I'll get into the particulars, but I want to make an announcement right now because I don't want to forget this. Today, we were able to confirm that actor, director, producer, activist, and humanitarian Danny Glover is going to participate in a community forum on the question of the Oakland A's not going to the Port of Oakland, but remaining at their current site at the Coliseum. It's going to take place on August the 31st at Acts Full Gospel Church. It's a very significant church in East Oakland. Bishop Bob Jackson is a part of the alliance, and he has allowed the Alliance to be able to host this particular forum at his church. We want to fill that church up, if possible, with the community, all of you here, and everyone within reach of my voice are invited to show up on August the 31st. From 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It will be streamed live in living color.
And where do we find out more information?
Well, yes. You can find out the address of, I don't have the address off the top of my head about Axville Gospel Church, but the word will be getting out. We just got the confirmation today, and I wanted to get that information out. As I mentioned in a lot of my talks, I'm a third-generation longshore worker. My maternal grandfather started working on the waterfront here in the Bay Area in 1944. My father started in 1963. My great-uncle started in 1965, and I came on in 1985. I want to talk a little bit about the importance of the ILWU Local 10, not only to my family, but to the Black community. I like to think that I have been a part of an institution that has done a great deal to promote and provide a vehicle for members of the Black left of the working class. Names like Albert James, Claude Sanders, William Bill Chester, the first African American to serve as an international officer of the ILWU. These three in particular were all members of the Harry Bridges Defense Committee when Harry Bridges was under attack. There's also a fellow by the name of Johnny Walker. I'm not as familiar with him as I am with the others that I had just made reference to. These are the men who would accompany Harry when he spoke. They were packing to protect him. And I understood the reason why Harry meant so much to the Black community. Because his reaching out to the Black community in 1934 was a very historical moment. Long before there was any affirmative action, Harry understood the relationship between the Black and the white worker. So much so that when Danny Glover recently spoke at the reparations hearing just a few weeks ago, he made reference to that 1934 struggle, and in particular, Harry Bridges reaching out to the Black community. He thought that that was a defining moment for equity and civil rights. I grew up in a longshore family. And some of my earliest memories of my grandfather was when he used to bring home men who he worked with in his gang, and they were white. My grandfather was a Black Creole. They would come to my grandmother's house on Union Street in West Oakland. My grandmother was a wonderful cook, and they would have her leftovers. And that was the first time I'd ever sat down with white folks in an intimate kind of a setting. And I learned a lot of things from listening to them. I mean, I'm 8 years old, but one of the things that really struck me was the reverence in which they spoke of Harry Bridges. You know, it was somebody, you know, like when you're young, I mean, you know, I was reading the newspapers and I knew about Eisenhower, you know, John Foster Dulles' name was on the news, but I didn't hear anything about Harry Bridges. Why? Who is this man? And the other name that I remember so clearly was Paul Robeson. My grandfather talked a lot about him, and I'm saying, I don't know, who is Paul Robeson? I know who Jackie Robinson is. I know who Martin Luther King is, but who is this Paul Robeson guy? I learned those names at my grandfather's kitchen table. The first time that I ever attended a gathering where Dr. Martin Luther King was speaking was at the old Oakland Auditorium. They call it the Henry J. Kaiser Center now, near Lake Merritt. And I can recall so vividly my paternal grandfather, my maternal grandfather, my father, and myself going to hear Dr. King speak at the Oakland Auditorium. These are things that mean a lot to you when you're growing up. You know, a lot of times you can't put things together. Steve talked about the union coming to the defense of the strikers at San Francisco State, both the AFT and the students, because the AFT went out because of the students. And they weren't going out first because I can tell you because I was disrupting classes. And they were in there trying to teach. One of the things that I will mention here, and it was very controversial at the time, but Steve was absolutely right about why the National Guard wasn't called in. It had a great deal to do with the ILWU's relationship with Joe Alioto. A very controversial move was made, and some of you may have remembered that. The ILWU supported Joe Alioto, and in exchange for that, the ILWU got inroads to City Hall, because one of the deputy mayors was a man by the name of Joe Johnson. And Joe Johnson was a very close friend of Paul Robeson, very close friend. So we had influence, and you're right, that was not going to happen, and it didn't. Of course, the police still did some terrible things. Brother McAllister, who was beaten so bad, that iconic photograph of him bleeding, that strike set me on a path to everything that I'm doing right now. I really couldn't put it all together at that point. I mean, I kind of had mixed feelings when I heard that William Bill Chester was going to be on that select committee. That was, the select committee was put together by Mayor Alioto to negotiate with the students to settle the strike. You know, when you're young, you know, you don't trust people over 30 years old. You know, hey, listen, we were making revolution, right, Steve? We weren't playing. We were not playing. It was a struggle that meant a lot to us, and it was a struggle that we waged successfully. Yeah, you can applaud. What I want to do now, I got some notes because, you know, I'm getting older here. I want to make sure I get some stuff covered here, you know. Let me just read something to you here. This came out over 10, 15, 20 years ago. What's happening to our cities? All across the U.S., working class neighborhoods and Black, Latino, and Asian people are being displaced from our cities at a scale not seen since the abuses of urban renewal in the 1960s. Skyrocketing rents, mass evictions, low-wage jobs have eroded vibrant historic communities like West Oakland that are being replaced with luxury condominiums, shopping centers, and tourist attractions. I view this struggle that's taking place at the Port of Oakland as indicative of the crisis of capitalism that has produced many sharpening contradictions, not only among the working class and the oppressed people, but also between sections of the U.S. and global ruling class as well. The Oakland A's scheme to build a baseball park, 3,000 condominiums, 400-room hotel, 1.2 million retail space at the third busiest port on the West Coast and the fifth busiest on the entire country is indeed a fantasy. And I liken this situation to them seeing Howard Terminal as being Fantasy Island. Well, there's water. It's cut off from civilization because of two railroads. You have a freight rail line that sometimes has containers over a mile long. If you've ever gone through Jack London Square, you know what I'm talking about. Then there's an Amtrak line. Yeah, you cut off from civilization. Not to mention the 2,000 to 3,000 trucks that come into the port each and every day. The arrogance of John Fisher to produce an architectural rendering of this boutique of a ballpark that will only seat 34,000 people. It's not very big. Not very big, 34,000. Because listen, that's not where the money is. That's just a little distraction. This is about changing the face of West Oakland and changing the water, making the waterfront a place for condominiums, hotels, and amusement for the ruling class and the wealthy. That's what this is about. It is actually, we took on a tour, two politicians who are promoting legislation to make it easy for John Fisher to get this built. Assemblyman Rob Bonta and State Senator Nancy Skinner. Yes, oh, you thought Nancy was, oh, yeah, I know she's cozy with the labor councils. I didn't have a smiling face at all when I met Nancy. I had to show my chagrin. I was respectful. But one thing I did do at the conclusion of the tour, we took them on a tour of Howard Terminal so they could see. We had the artist rendering with cranes that don't work to give the stadium the ambiance of the waterfront. Cranes are not iconic because of what they look like. They're iconic because of what they do and what they mean to the city of Oakland. And longshoremen are critical because we operate the cranes. We maintain the cranes. We're critical to the global economy. Let me go back to these sharpening contradictions. Contradictions, you got a billionaire who wants to eat out of the same lunch as the International Maritime? That takes some gall. But you want to know what? People have to understand the state, the elected officials, they have not forgotten about the ILWU and its history. We're still red-baited. Jack made reference to how we've had port commissioners in the Pacific Northwest and Los Angeles. We've even had it here in San Francisco. But San Francisco was no longer the shipping mecca that it once was. They had Harry on there in 1970. But by that time, They had already made their decision about what they were going to do with shipping. And that's why when you go down in Embarcadero today, Pier 27 and Pier 35, the two terminals that deal with passenger vessels. Everything else, you got tours of Alcatraz and the Bay and stuff like that. It is not beyond reality to think that John Fisher and Libby Schaff would like to see a domino effect take place. What I mean by that is, if there's condominium development, what's going to happen is that the people who move in there, they're going to start complaining about the noise and the pollution from Schnitzer, which is a metal recycling company right next door. They're going to be complaining about the lights and the noise from the tugboats and all the rest of that shit. And you know what? And they're going to have a very good case for nuisance. Oh, yes. But let's just think about the shippers. We don't want to put up with all this crap while they're building. Our ships come in and they turn around right at Howard Terminal. We'll just go to L.A. As Jack mentioned, we'll put it on a train. We'll truck it. This port is the economic engine for the Northern California region. It generates some 73,000 jobs and some 827,000 jobs throughout the nation. Port of Oakland is the shortest destination point from Asia. All of the agribusinesses whose food that's shipped overseas, Port of Oakland is critical to that. And the idea that you could have a ballpark, condominiums, and shopping centers and restaurants, and that be compatible with a port, is insane. But only during the era of Donald Trump could this happen. I want to talk about who's a part of this alliance to keep the A's where they are. You'll be surprised. The Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, which represents the port operators, terminal operators, stevedoring companies, and the shipping companies, we're now locked arms. The Sierra Club of California, the Sierra Club of San Francisco, the Agriculture Transportation Coalition, Custom Brokers and Forwarders Association of Northern California, American Waterways Operators, Sailors Union of the Pacific, Golden Gate Audubon Society, California Truckers Association, the Harbor Truckers Association, Merchant Pacific Marine, Marine Engineers Beneficial Association, just to name a few. I call it the Coalition of the Willing. This is a crisis of capitalism we're talking about here. Steve made reference to our brothers and sisters in the building trades. Well, let's do a little truth-telling here. The first vice president of the Oakland Port Commissioners is a man by the name of Andreas Kluver. He is the head of the building trades in Alameda County. He's the first vice president. In February of 2017, when Trump was newly installed as president, many of you may have forgotten, but the building trades met with Trump, along with the Teamster head, Jimmy Hoffa. And as a matter of fact, Terry O'Sullivan head of the Laborers International Union of North America, said this on NBC, quote, "The president's a builder, we're builders," unquote. They praised Trump being so nice to them and giving them this wonderful tour of the Oval Office. But you want to know what was one of the most telling things about that escapade? When they left Donald Trump, they could not get a commitment from him to carry out Davis-Bacon, which was passed in the 1930s to ensure that any public works project funded by the government, that the workers would be paid prevailing wages. They couldn't even get that out of that asshole. That's a fact. I'm not making this up. We have to talk about these contradictions, sisters and brothers, that they are what they are. Let's be realistic. The A's want to build where they currently are. They want to build housing, and they want retail, and maybe even some computer tech development. That's what they want that for. Then they want to come to the Port of Oakland to do those things that I've already mentioned. And they're already making moves. And the city council is not happy about it, but it's showing how greedy and avaricious John Fisher is. People are saying, well, you did an end run on us, John, when you made this deal with the county. We didn't even know anything about that. Yours truly, at one of the city council meetings, raised the point of, in the city of Portland, Oregon, on the Willamette River, developers are planning to build a baseball park at the port. And they don't even have a team. If they build it, if we build it, they will come. And they also let this out the bag, that one of the teams we might get is the Oakland A's. Because if they don't get what they want, they're coming here. And if we don't get the A's, Major League Baseball will give us an expansion team. This is going on right now. I've got videos that I can share where local television is, extolling how beautiful this is going to look. You have to understand something. Right next door, the Giants, Oracle Stadium, that's what they want. Yeah, on the water. But the difference is that there's no port next door. It's a union hall. Close, but not the same. They want to be able to look and see, oh, the skyline, San Francisco. Oh, this is going to be so wonderful. And the fans are going to be walking because there's no place to park. And not only that, fans drink when they go to games. There will be a number of fatalities from people getting killed by trains, trying to rush across to get to the stadium for the throwing out of the first pitch. It's going to happen. That place is dangerous, not to mention toxic for over a century of industrial and maritime use. And the cost. And they're using, we're going to leave. And all these Democrats, we don't want this to be on our watch. So this is a very important struggle for the working class. It really and truly is. And I agree with Jack wholeheartedly that meaning the city and a whole lot of other forces, would like to see ILWU Local 10 gone. Yes. Why would they like to see Local 10 gone? I was around some people yesterday who were in the trucking business. And some things came up that I know will come up later. It had to do with why the West Coast ports are important. Being able to move cargo, keeping schedules, and the first thing that came to my mind, oh boy, I know Local 10 is a thorn in their side. Shutting down the port against killer cops and justice for Oscar Grant. Shutting down the port regarding the issue of We Are One in solidarity with the Wisconsin workers. Port shut down regarding solidarity for the Palestinians. Blocked the boat. Port shut down on May Day regarding police brutality and murder. The issue of $15 an hour. Shall I go on? They wouldn't miss us. But there are people who would. The agriculture, the agribusinesses don't want us out of business. Contradictions. You know, contradictions are really something if the employers is cozying up to us. Maritime is being threatened here. They understand what's going on. They may have mixed feelings, but longshoremen in Local 10 turn out a lot of cargo. That's a fact. More than anyone else on this West Coast. So, we talked about who John Fisher is. He's a privatizer, backing KIPP and Rocketship charter schools, not only in the state of California, but nationally, diverting hundreds of millions of dollars out of public schools. I found out something yesterday that you might find ironic. John Fisher, who says he loves the port so much, do you know none of the shipping of his merchandise for the Gap comes through the Port of Oakland? I found that out from the truckers yesterday, harbor truckers. No, it goes to LA. He lives here. I understand he's buying, that they're buying up property all over the Bay Area, all over Oakland. And they've made no commitment to stay. Because I was at a city council meeting 2 weeks ago, and one of the city council members asked the question, do you have an alternative plan in the event that this doesn't materialize? And the staff was, no, we don't have any. Well, I mean, what I mean is the Oakland Coliseum site an alternative? No, we don't have that on the plan as of now. Wait till they start digging and finding out how much toxicity is in that ground. We're looking at a narrative like what's happening at Bayview Hunters Point and at Treasure Island. There have been lies, not even half-truth, they're straight up lies. When they ask questions about what are the numbers? Are we going to be responsible for infrastructure development adjacent to the ballpark? No answers. Oh, we've talked to the people at the port, and they're lying through their doggone teeth. So I'm going to wrap it up right now because I'm quit while I'm ahead. Thank you for your attention. I just had to take the time to go through some of this stuff because it's very important to me. And I'm retired from the waterfront, but not from the struggle. And so we're going to need some strong organizing, because this is one last thing that I need to talk about, because this may help you with some of your neighbors. What Skinner and Bonta are doing is that they are creating a way around the protection of industrial sites from people. You know, where we work, it's dangerous. Not only can a container fall on you and kill you, but there's also what they call particulate matter in the air from diesel fuel. And these assholes are talking about building houses. There's already high incidence of asthma, and the ILWU is taking great strides to make the port safe. But it still is an industrial work site. But they want to make it possible to build, so they're trying to create exceptions to the rule of law as it pertains to keeping people off of this industrial sites for residents. Oh, well, it'll just be an exception for this. All the other regulations will still be in place, but we know that's a lie. Zoning with regards to housing, they want to change that. So that means that the public ain't going to be, the public is not going to have the same kind of protections anymore, where you can build, and they're taking that authority out of the community, leaving it in the hands of developers. So there's a number of organizing strategies here that people who may love baseball, and most people don't love the port, but they love the things that the port provides. Thank you very much. Somebody had their hand up. I don't know.
I just want to add a footnote to what you said, Clarence, about John Fisher from the perspective of being a East Bay baseball fan of the A's. The A's have also had the lowest team salary for as long as he's been the owner. And whenever a player gets good, he trades them or gets rid of them. They go into free agency. So the fans, for 2 years they may have a winning team, but the next 5 years they're going to have lousy teams. And so he screwed the baseball fans as well.
On that point, I just remembered something that is important for me to get out to you. Before Fisher, well, Fisher owned this before, but there was a man by the name of Lewis Wolf, who is a developer. He did a lot of work in developing in San Jose and other areas, because the A's were entertaining the idea of going to Fremont. They were entertaining going to San Jose. They also tried to make a move to Laney College, near Lake Merritt in Chinatown, okay? But this is the point I wanted to make. Lewis Wolf was on board when Howard Terminal was put on the table as an alternative. He's a developer. You know what he said? Going to the Port of Oakland is not viable. You're making reference to the history that was documented by Gerald Horne in his book, Fighting in Paradise, with the ILWU organizing workers on the pineapple plantations and other places in Hawaii.
And also the Alaskan canneries. That was all over there.
Yeah. Let me just say this to you. The building trades, they were rejoicing over building the XL pipeline, jobs, and let's face it, the building trades are going to make some money. There's going to be a spike. There's going to be some money made, okay? If they build in at both places. But I just want to call your attention to something. Out of nowhere, the building trades in 2019 decided to have a May Day action. They didn't join with the ILWU, who've been doing it for any number of years. But they decided to have one on May Day before we had ours at Oscar Grant Plaza. And you know what they talked about? The theme was, we only have 50% of the construction jobs in the city of Oakland. They're always, and I'm certain, I've been told this on good authority, that the bosses let them off from work. They do that kind of thing. Yeah, you know, I mean, like this is now the other. Now this is another point that you've made that you made me think about, Mary Jane, and that's this: the ILWU wages, longshore wages, some of the best wages in the country. Thousands upon thousands of people line up to get applications and all sort of things to get that job. Someone made a veiled criticism of me when I spoke in front of City Hall around May Day, because I made the point that we pay living wages, and people who get jobs at the ballpark will be selling peanuts and baseball caps. So someone told me, they didn't mention my name, but I knew they were talking about me. They said, you know, someone mentioned about people selling baseball caps and things, but it's dignity in all work. Oh, there is dignity in all work. That wasn't my point. But listen to this. Listen, they know how much we make, and they also know who works at the Port of Oakland. They know. And it creates a chafing in the trade union movement because people know how much we make. They know the power that we have at the point of production. They know our benefits, and they're envious. So some people say, hey, longshoremen lose a few jobs, we're going to hire all these people for $15 an hour. Hey, but get this. You got baseball players making millions, and the people who work at the port making $15 an hour. That's what's happening here. You may have children, nieces, and nephews who want to become longshore workers. It ain't going to happen if this ballpark happens. They might have a job working at the hotel, may have a job working at one of the retail outlets, cleaning up the condominiums, maybe. These people are ruthless.
So, you know, that was one of my points I was making when I stated that we hire over 540 people. You know, today, starting wages for casual longshoremen starts about $30 an hour. No, you figure that out. These guys are going to eliminate that job to pay people $15 an hour. They cannot live off those wages. But the people that are starting right now with $30 an hour, sooner or later they'll even go higher. Live good, take care of their family, their kids get an education, and all those good things come in with it. But when the sister talked about the cannery workers, you know, we had back in Seattle where 2 cannery workers was murdered, killed, because they wanted to organize the Alaskan workers, right? Well, you know, the same hall that they had for that time was there for, it was a historical location for a long time. And just maybe yesterday, I saw some kind of article, they build building condos right there in the spot. I don't know how they did it, but this is what's going on.
Yeah, they say it was dilapidated and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, well, they find a way to take away the history pretty soon when we're talking no more about it, right? But I said we just got to keep strong. We got to keep sharing the word and help our brothers and sisters here by supporting the fight, because this is a lifetime fight. This is never end. And anytime we get in and we going ready to go further, there's always somebody coming to put us back. And it's a shame. It's a shame on those unions, those brothers that have been sucking the blood out of the labor movement, that helped them advance to where they are today, to turn around and sell us out for pennies. Pennies. Yeah.
You've got to know your history, and the history of the ILWU being in the left wing of the labor movement, we've come in conflict with the trade union bureaucracy many times. Just recently, when this fascist prayer group was going to march in Chrissy Park. Do you all remember that? Yeah. That was just a couple of years ago. And they put it out all over the media. They're going to have a rally in Chrissy Park. And the ILWU Local 10 voted to shut down the port and march and rally exactly where the fascists were going to be. We were going to stop them. That's what the resolution said, to stop the fascists. The trade union bureaucracy in San Francisco, the AFL-CIO, Central Labor Council, said, oh, we're going to protest against these fascists coming to San Francisco, but we're going to be all the way over in the Mission. We don't want to be around where they are. You know, they have a right to free speech and all that. As far as we're concerned, by the way, we have a constitution that bars police from our union. They can't be members of our union because of the role they played in the 34 strike. We understand what the police forces are. So this whole history of the ILWU is encapsulated in murals around the Bay Area, painted by WPA artists like Victor Arnautoff, Anton Refrigier in the Rincon Annex, and there's a big controversy going on now. And one of the key panels at George Washington High School is a picture of George Washington standing over the body of a dead Indian and pointing to white, ghastly-colored pioneers going west. And in the background are slaves working over here on his plantation. That was painted in 1936. It was a critique of the first president of the United States, George Washington, at George Washington High School. And now it's being twisted around. You should read Willie Brown. He had an excellent article in the Chronicle on Sunday. He said, yeah, his daughter went to George Washington High School. Those murals didn't cause her any pain, but it created an atmosphere at home where we could have a discussion about that. That was an important part of the history of the United States. And so there's that mural, and then there are the murals at Rincon Annex. If you take down the ones in George Washington High School, you're going to go after the Rincon Annex, because that was Anton Refrigier, who had to appear before the House Un-American Activities Committee because he was an admitted communist who studied under the greatest muralist of all times, another communist, Diego Rivera. And so where does this stop? If you, the murals at Rincon Annex show longshoremen in their white cap. They're in their white caps, and they're at a union meeting, and standing over them and orating is Harry Bridges. And then there's a picture of the cops shooting the longshoremen. This is all the murals that were painted by communist muralists, and they want to take these down. And this is an important campaign. You really have to get behind this. We had, last Tuesday night, this room was full, standing room only, of people that were speaking. And so in response, back in the 60s when San Francisco State was going on, there was some turmoil about, at that time, well, maybe we should take those murals down. And what came out of that was they should have a response mural to those murals. And the response mural was painted by a muralist, a black muralist named Dewey Crumpler. Dewey Crumpler has been interviewed around this present controversy and says, without Arnautoff's mural, my mural means nothing. It's, you know, they're one of the same thing. They're inextricably linked, is what he was saying. And so, you know, it's important to, you know, Leo Robinson, who was said here, mentioned before by a couple of our speakers. Leo used to like to get up at our union meetings and say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any rights. And a parallel to that would be, if you don't know your history, you don't have any history. And that's what they're trying to remove by removing these murals, is to remove our militant class struggle history. So you need to get behind that fight. Thank you.
I think that these issues of the developers. It's not unique in Oakland, it's in San Francisco. In fact, in every major city in the United States, the developers run the city with the support of the Democrats, and the Democrats are controlled by the developers. That's really what's going on. And since we don't have a Labor Party or Workers' Party in this country, there's no political opposition. And I think one of the interesting things about Willie Brown, his article, is this is the logic of the Democratic Party, that they put people on the Board of Education who, using identity politics, using nationalism, unanimously voted to spend $800,000 to destroy, I mean, not just to cover them, to destroy them, thinking that's going to be the first step in reparations. Now, let's talk, in San Francisco, there's a program called Peer Assisted Review, PAR. And we, the people who live in San Francisco, pay $1 million a year for this program. It was supposed to be set up to help teachers, you know, who had problems or something like that. And what we've discovered is that this program is being used to get rid of senior teachers, African-American teachers, and Latino teachers, this PAR program. And not only that, but this program has also been used to target dissidents in the union. They put them in this program, and then they fire them. They coerce them to quit. And they sign non-disclosure agreements. Now, this is the school board, and I went up to Mark Sanchez, who's the vice chair of the board, and he's the one who said, this is the first step towards reparations. And I said, Mark, this program, PAR, is being used to discipline teachers in a discriminatory way. This is not what it was set up to do. It was set up to help teachers. So you know what he told me? This is the Mark Sanchez who's fighting against racism and discrimination. He said, our lawyers said it was okay. So this is what we're talking about. There's schools here that need supplies that are breaking down, that they, especially African-American and Latino schools, poor schools, they don't have the money for it, but they have $800,000 to spend. Now, we are not in a fight at all with the Native American community, because everyone should know the history of the genocide and the attacks on the Native Americans in this country. And what I proposed and others, use that money to build a Native American Cultural Historical Center on the campus and have regular classes and have a requirement of every student in San Francisco Unified School District to be required to go to that school and get an education on those murals before they graduate. That's a way to really use that. And that's what they're terrified of doing, because when those murals were constructed, because they're mosaic, when they were constructed, there was a reason there were no signage on those murals. And the reason is if you had signage on the murals, you would have to say, these murals are telling the truth about George Washington, the slaves that he owned, and these murals are telling the truth about the genocide against Native Americans and the violation of all the treaties that the Native Americans signed for the protection of their property. So if they had put that signage on those murals at that time, the right-wingers, the anti-communists would say, this is proof positive, we got to get rid of these murals. We got to destroy these, because look at the signage, it says that. Now the thing is, the superintendent, Vincent Matthews, he said, and this was pretty surprising, he said, I saw these murals a year ago and I was shocked. Now he's a trainee of the Eli Broad Institute, which is privatizer, and he was in charge in Oakland Unified School District. So he was appointed by Jerry Brown to take care of the budget deficit of the Oakland schools. What he did is he brought in many more charters, and he left them with $150 million deficit when he left that school district. So this guy's a union buster and a privatizer. But this, he says, Vincent Matthews, he says, I was shocked. I was shocked by those murals. Well, you know, you have to ask the question, if you were that shocked by how these murals were causing traumatic, you know, feelings of the students, and you couldn't remove the murals immediately, why don't you put up signage explaining what they are? Wouldn't cost a lot of money. You put up signs and say, this is what they are. They are not interested in educating these students about the murals. They don't want them to know what's going on with the history of the working class and the history of the United States. Otherwise, they would have done something for it. So these connections, John Fisher, Doris Fisher, who runs the KIPP school in San Francisco, where they co-located and wrecked a charter, with a charter school, the Malcolm X Academy. I mean, imagine that. KIPP, run by John Fisher and his mother, Doris Fisher, busted up a public school, the Malcolm X Academy, where the student grades were improving, the kids were getting better, and they said, we're going to bust it up and co-locate. Co-location is part of the destruction of public education in California, Prop 39. These billionaires passed Prop 39, unfortunately, with the support of the CTA and the CFT, to privatize education. They said, well, we'll lower the percentage you need to pass a bond issue. But what that has happened now is that bond money is going to build charter schools. Our taxes are going to build charter schools. That was Prop 39 and co-location. So these racists, and I would say we've left out really the aspect of racism in gentrification, because this is ethnic cleansing. A lot of, and Clarence told me, a lot of blacks have already been driven out of West Oakland. The last place is in East Oakland. We're going to have the meeting on the 31st. These people are racist. They want the black and Latino community out of San Francisco. They want them out of Hunters Point. They want them out of West Oakland, and they don't care how they do it, and they pay people off in these communities. I'll give you an example. The A. Philip Randolph Institute here, the head of it, James Bryant, whose son is now running SEIU 1021, Joseph Bryant, he was given money by the developer Lennar to lobby for the development for the condos at Hunters Point. So you're here as a laundering agency, supposed to be to defend the black community, and he's given money to lobby to get the blacks the hell out of Hunters Point. This is part of the corruption. Not only was he given money, but also the San Francisco Labor Council received a grant of $500,000 in education, quote unquote, education from the Lennar Foundation. Now, we never heard what happened to that money. What happened to that $500,000? What kind of education? I would say, how about education about the people that are dying because of poisoning, because of radioactive contamination? That's the kind of education we need. The protection of families and workers who've been fired for being whistleblowing. That's the kind of education we need to defend the people who are defending the community. No, that money disappeared. No record of it. So we're talking about, unfortunately, systemic corruption. And as Gabrielle was saying, these billionaires know where to put the money. I mean, you know, they get people to say, I mean, Clarence was at a meeting, he told me that they had a meeting in West Oakland, and they were telling him that they could get the contract to be peanut vendors. Be what? Peanut vendors. In other words, we're going to give you something. We're going to give you a franchise to be a peanut seller in the new stadium if you support this thing. We're going to give you peanuts, but the idea that they were going to give peanut franchises as an inducement of people in the community to support this stadium, I mean, you can't make this up. Well, these billionaire owners of these teams are racist, they're crooks. I mean, they have a long history. They're Trump supporters. I mean, they're the ones that led the attack on football players who were protesting the racism and discrimination. They wanted them out. And so there's a connection to these football teams, the owners of these football teams, and what they do, because they make their money on the backs of players who are mostly African American. That's where they make their money. And even at the Giants here, he's an owner of Franklin Resources. He gave to Trump, and when people found out about it, there was a protest about that. But who are these owners? Who are they representing? I mean, this isn't just about John Fisher, because there's a whole group of people who are saying, how can we take over things? How can we rip off people? How can we have another scam? That's what this is all about. And I think in the connections that we make with the mural, with the history of the ILWU, with the gentrification, the ethnic cleansing that's going on, we can really develop these links and make it easier to see the connections. When I'm sure John Fisher heard that we were talking about the KIPP chain and Rocketship, and Dave Cavall is on the board of directors of Rocketship. The manager of the A's is on the board of directors of the Rocketship charter chain. President. you know, people don't know that, and they should know that. They should know who these people are, because if you don't know who you're fighting, you can't fight them. And this Gap Corporation, which is right down here on Embarcadero, I think maybe sometime there should be a visit to John Fisher and Doris Fisher and the family, and saying, what the hell are you doing in Oakland? Trying to destroy the Port of Oakland, trying to destroy the jobs of thousands of longshore and maritime workers. What the hell are you doing? And building $4,000 million condos in West Oakland. They have to be put on trial, frankly, because people, when you put them on trial, then people say, yes, it's wrong. We have to defend the jobs. We have to defend the community. And the fact of the matter is the transit workers and others in the Labor Council who are supporting this and voted for this thing, they're cutting their own throats, because the Coliseum Stadium, the BART Coliseum Stadium, was built for sports. It was built for sports. It was built for getting masses of people to go to sports teams, and they're saying to hell with that. That was public money, and that's part, again, of privatization.